Welcome to the Libertarian Counterpoint. My name is John Cameron, and I realized in the last show I didn't really say anything about me. I am the moderator for this evening. I'm owner of the Effective Leadership Coach, the Selling School, and author of Re-Kill and Rewire, two very good thrillers available on Amazon. And for the entertainment section of the show, Phillip Larrea, who is author and editor of
the Minute Dots Investment Newsletter.
Investment newsletter, and this covers what types of investments?
This is actually to connect the dots, so it's all kinds of investments and personal financial planning, which is probably the more important part. And the title comes from, it may be those things that you can gather in a minute, or it may mean minute dots. So I'm very interested in the details that other people miss.
Minute and minute. English is such a fascinating language, isn't it? And speaking of fascinating, Veronica Petersen, who is a libertarian activist and mother and victim of, no, we won't talk about that until later in the show. And let's jump right into the show. And the first topic is something that is going to have a huge impact on the United States if it passes, and that impact is being talked about by environmentalists with fervor, and one of those fervorists, not a good word, but I just made it up, environmentalist is our president, Barack Hussein Obama. And that is new EPA ozone regs are being reviewed right now by our leadership, which would, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, or the Economic Prevention Association, as we like to call it if we're in business, puts out regulations and rules independently as per our Constitution. I think it's Article 3 of the, maybe it's 3A. No, there isn't an independent regulatory agency in the Constitution. And then they're reviewed by our government, and typically because people who work in our government can't do math, they're passed. I don't know how often they're turned down. This one is going to drop the parts per million allowance for ozone in the atmosphere, ground level ozone. Not ozone in the sky is good, ozone on the ground is bad. I know it's kind of hard to understand that, but it's true. It was 85 parts per million, no, 0.085 parts per million. That standard was lowered to 0.075 parts per million. And the proposal is now to lower it somewhere between 0.060 parts per million and 0.070, I'm confusing myself, parts per million. And what's interesting is that about 60% of the country, major population areas, and such horribly polluted places as Yellowstone National Park aren't meeting the old standards. So this new regulation is going to drop those standards even further. The government says it's going to cost a few $1 billion a year, but the health benefits are going to outweigh the costs on the economy and the environment, or the economy and the cost of regulation. So what do we think, folks? Is this regulation necessary? Is it regulatory overreach? Sorry for the long introduction, but it's kind of complex. Is it simply maybe a smokescreen to take the cameras off of the mess that our country's in? I mean, what is it? What's your opinion?
The environment is moving in that direction anyway. And this is one of those ironies, and California is probably one of the best examples.
So what you're saying is
creating all of these regulations, it succeeded in doing what it meant to do, which is to keep people from owning cars and going to electric and hybrid vehicles, not, perhaps out of some concern for the environment, but more, seeing gas prices go up from $4.50, down to $2.50, say the heck with it. And so people of their own have looked for ways that they could sort of own, where they were not going to be subject to the whim of, let's say, the latest tax on gasoline. So California, which depends on the gasoline tax, turns around and said, "Oh my gosh, this worked too well. We're not collecting the taxes we're supposed to collect. Tell you what we're going to do." And in the latest proposal, Governor Brown intends to raise the vehicle registration tax on regular cars by about $35. He intends to raise them on electric vehicles by $100. So none of this has anything to do with the environment. This has to do with, if you look at every segment of our society, it's about government identifying the crucial things that we need to live, whether it's a shelter, whether it's to heat or cool our homes, no matter what it is, and government says, you must pay me for this, otherwise you'll die. And so that's where it's really going, and the irony of it is that it will probably succeed.
In killing us?
It will succeed in a way that government did not anticipate the unintended consequences.
So now hold on here. And this would be my question to you, Veronica. Do you think that you're talking about the unintended consequences, which is these new regulations will probably kill off the natural gas industry in this country, or at least make it heinously expensive and force natural gas prices up? And natural gas prices have been one of the reasons that our economy has been thriving and people have switched from other means of energy to natural gas because it's cheaper. And this is going to add huge costs, according to everybody, even the government's numbers maker-uppers. I don't know what they call them. I wonder if that's their official title. I'm a government number maker-upper. So is the unintended consequence the killing of an industry, or is the intended consequence of these thinly disguised machine-hating, commerce-hating, capitalism-hating people who move into government? Intended or unintended?
Of the individuals or government itself?
And the individuals who work in government. And the government itself. Two-part question.
Well, that is tricky. I think that most people that work for the government really do have good intentions, but I think that when they come together, they kind of lose sight of what those intentions really were. You know, the minute I think Tesla is a great example of this. You know, I mean, we said, hey, we want to do all these great things for the environment, and we're going to make all these tax accommodations, and then all of a sudden, and it was to promote, alternative fuel sources or what have you. And then somebody comes in and does it. And then we have outrage, and so now we have other states saying, no, Tesla, or we don't want, to do business. We don't want Tesla to do their business this way. So, everywhere you turn around, there's getting stomped out.
Well, let's talk about the politicians then. When I talk about government, all right, because I think that again, most people who go to work every day actually try to do a decent job, even though sometimes they might not look at themselves in the mirror when they think about what they're actually doing. What about the politicians? Do you think it's an unintended consequence to stamp out capitalism and progress and machines and all the rest of those things which have extended the life of human beings so much on our planet? Or do you think I'm being cynical again?
Well, all I can think of right now is we were talking earlier about Dianne Feinstein and the Airbnb. She was, I guess, supporting something to make in San Francisco a temporary rental, I think something like 90 days. Now, here's a woman that says, hey, I want to help people, and then the very people that are that need to be renting their places out, while they're away or to help make ends meet, they can't even help themselves. So I kind of think it's pretty obvious, too, right? Like, these people need this income, and here she is saying, I want to help these people, but then no, you can't actually help yourself. So no, I think that's a very intentional act on her part. And I think that's more common than I would like to.
So the unintended consequences that we talk about of government action are, for example, if we've talked about Lyndon Baines Johnson's Great Society, we'd say one of the unintended consequences is an awful lot of single-family or single-head of household families. It was designed supposedly as to help people, in case there was only one person in the home, but it created something. So you're saying that the unintended consequences that we think of as the fallout of government mismanagement are actually the intended consequence on the part of a lot of these people in power. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think maybe, and I want to say that because they come in and then they make it harder. So then all of a sudden we see the unintended consequences, but then we try and stamp those out too. I think that all of a sudden they went from, or when gas prices got high, people started making their own biodiesel. And then all of a sudden there's regulations on restaurants being able to sell their old oil to make biodiesel. So, like they might have been unintended and they might have been just incidental, but then all of a sudden they're not. They're actively put out by government.
Well, and the problem is that government looks to last year to see who funded their government. And it turns out to be these legacy businesses, and what they're trying to do is create incentives away from innovation to push people into the legacy business. And we could talk about taxi cabs, and all that really happened is taxi cabs got priced out of business. You mentioned natural gas, and one of those things that the Public Utility Commission here in California just approved a rate increase from PG&E on its most conservative small customers, so that it would not have to raise rate on the power hogs, because the government figured out that it was the power hogs who were paying the taxes on the energy usage. So if the PUC gave incentive to the power hogs to go solar where it really would cost out with economy of scale, then what have they got? They've got a bunch of people at one end who aren't using energy, and all of the people who were paying for a lot of energy all of a sudden aren't paying for any. And so this is what happened with whether it's our gasoline highway tax or name anything where government priced an industry out of business with taxes, and somebody else came up with an innovation around it, whether it's Tesla or whether it's Airbnb or what have you.
And they try to figure out a way to eliminate that competition so that they can keep milking that cash cow. So let's talk about how. Is this focus on the environment by Obama? Is that really his passion, or do you think it's a shell game? Because he said that the climate change is a clear and present danger and the most pressing danger that our civilization faces. Is he real in that, or do we think it's just a shell game to keep people from looking at the 18 trillion? 186 billion, this is a couple hours ago, so it's higher now, of national debt that we have, not counting unfunded pension liabilities and all the rest of that. Is this a shell game to keep keep them from looking behind the curtain, or do you think he's genuinely excited about this?
I think he's genuinely trying to appeal to the people. I mean, people are concerned about climate change, whether or not they're right to be concerned about it. It's a hot topic, and he's really playing into it. I don't think he cares. I
So
think
he's riding the horse because it's a popular horse.
Yeah, it's a very popular horse, and those super funds have a lot of money, and they're really easy to just siphon money. I mean, it's a pretty sweet deal for the government.
Well, it's an easy issue, but you should not, the irony of the moment that the president is in Alaska renaming the mountain.
And going on a reality TV show.
And at the same time, he had just signed 2 weeks ago Arctic drilling rights in Alaska, so for Shell Oil. So at the when push comes to shove, he has not been a great friend of the environment when it came to actually doing something. If you are the kind that believes in that sort of thing. And, it's an easy, as you say, Veronica, it's an easy issue. How can you be wrong on wanting to, hug a polar bear?
Well, I think hugging a polar bear would be a very wrong thing to do because, there's way more of them now than there was 20 years ago, and they're hungry.
Right.
So I guess it's that global warming, when it gets warm, polar bear, never mind. So you think it's riding the popular horse and milking the cash cow, and you brought up something that kind of concerns me about this president, and I think why why people are so afraid of the U.S. now is that we're neither consistent nor predictable in foreign policy or anything else. We're friends one minute, foes the next. We go bomb the crap out of people and then support the same people 20 minutes later. And so that's my theory.
There was an issue, New York Times erroneously reported about the U.S. not using cluster bombs, and not having signed the treaty, which of course they have not. We have not signed the treaty, and we do sell cluster bombs specifically to the Saudis, who are bombing the Yemenis with these cluster bombs. They're insidious weapons. They're, the name says what they are. And we are going to be outraged that these Yemenis are going to perhaps not think well of us, and that perhaps one of them is going to start opening fire on a New York City street, and then they're terrorists. And so, to your point, we have so skewered everything to the idea if we do it, it is therefore right, by definition. If somebody else does it, well, they didn't have the right, given that they don't have our status. And that becomes, at this point, the single greatest issue, I think, in the United States, is that we no longer respect the rule of law. The people don't respect it, the police don't respect it, the politicians don't respect it, and when you don't respect rule of law, that is the very definition of anarchy.
Well, that's actually a wonderful point to bring us into something that is near and dear to me, and I think, Veronica, you have personal experience with this. Let's talk about a group of people who on their cars it says to serve and protect, but maybe that's not their goal now, and that's cops of all kinds and out of control cops. And let me tell you what I did earlier to research this segment, folks. I went to YouTube and just put in the subject "cops out of control," and I could have, and half of these were probably people trying to put cops in a bad light, but unfortunately half of them are people either videotaping or audio taping or being interviewed after interactions with people that we think of as cops. Now, I'm not talking about corrections officers. That's a whole nother episode. But cops, state cops, federal cops, local cops, sheriffs, highway patrol, all the rest of that. And I put in cops out of control, and I could have watched YouTube incident after incident until I died of old age. And no, I'm not that old. So, a tough thing. And that's just a kind of a minor story. Veronica, if you're willing to share about, I would consider kind of maybe not cop out of control, that you weren't, I don't think you were beaten,
definitely, no.
But you were certainly not, I don't think, you didn't feel that this person was your public servant, did you? So tell us about it.
Yes, I'll tell you about it. First, I should say I was with the police department as a cadet and a youth services intern for about 5 years. And I have a very close relationship with police in that sense. I originally set out to be a police officer. So I certainly don't intend to say horrible things about cops right now. But I did not pursue policing because of issues like this. And what happened was I was driving my kids to school from San Francisco to Solano County. It's about 55 miles, and it was the very first day of school.
Now, where is this again? I'm sorry.
But between San Francisco and Solano County.
Okay, all right.
So it's about an hour, between 40 minutes and an hour of a car ride. And it's the first time we've had to do it. We just moved recently. So the kids are in the back seat and they're sharing my cell phone, watching YouTube videos. And I'm in the carpool lane. And when you drive in the carpool lane, there seems to be this mystery about speed. Do you go the speed limit or do you keep up with traffic? And when traffic starts going, 85 miles an hour, like
people do.
So I moved out of the carpool lane because I felt pressured to go faster. So I went into the fast lane where people were going like, I don't know.
80
Yeah,
instead of
75,
85,
80
yeah.
or something. And so shortly after I did that, a CHP officer comes in the carpool lane, and he kind of drives next to me for a few minutes.
Stalks you. Oh, it's my word,
Yeah,
not hers.
yeah. And so then he gets behind me and he turns his lights on, and I had no idea why he was pulling me over, because he should have seen my kids in the car. And so I should say, in that area, carpool is 3 or more
Three.
people.
Bay Area, not two like we have here in Sacramento, not two like it is everywhere else in the world.
Yeah,
but
three. And so,
three real humans, not 3 blow-up dolls.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
yeah.
So I am. My kids are, scared. They said, "Why are we getting pulled over, Mom?" And I'm like, "I have no idea. I wasn't speeding. I had just pulled over to make sure I wasn't speeding. Everything on my car is legal. My license plate and the registration. There's no lights out or anything." And so I pull over, and then, and again, my kids are asking all these questions,
Mommy,
and we're
I'm
on the
scared.
freeway.
What's that?
Well, I pull over on the shoulder, and he gets on his loudspeaker, and he's telling me something, and I couldn't understand him over my kids and traffic. And then I think he just got louder, and he said to go to the next exit. And so we pull over in, was it Richmond?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, it was somewhere.
that you didn't want to be.
Yeah, I don't think it was Richmond. I don't remember which exit, but it was somewhere awful.
It wasn't Fairfield.
No, it wasn't Fairfield. No, but it was really a
Little joke.
shady area.
Little inside joke.
And but he. Actually, I pulled over one more time when I took the exit, and then he tells me to keep going. But again, I couldn't really hear him. And then he says, "I'll tell you when to stop," which didn't really do me any good in the car because I can't really hear him to know when to stop. And so he comes, we finally get pulled over. My kids are like, "What's going on?" And I kept telling him I have no idea. And so the officer comes up to my car, and he is on the passenger side, and I had the window rolled down for him. And he says, "I pulled you over because the minimum number of people in the carpool lane is 3, and there's only 1 of you in this car." And I looked at him and I said, "My kids don't count as people?" And because, and I mean, what do you think, right? Like, maybe I'm missing something and you have to be 18. I don't know. And
No, you're
yeah,
right.
I was pretty sure I was right about that, but I mean, maybe. And so I rolled down my windows, and they're tinted, but they're not like blacked out.
Not, what do they call that? Limo tinted?
No,
okay.
no.
Which is illegal, but
yeah,
unless you're a limo driver.
Exactly. And so what happened was he looks at my kids, and my kids are 7 and 10, so my 10-year-old doesn't need a booster seat, but my 7-year-old does. And because he was watching the YouTube video and sharing it with his brother, the seat was tilted just a hair. And the officer told me that wasn't safe. But he didn't say it in that nice of a way. His attitude was more like, "Look what your kid's car seat, why is it this way? And, like, this just isn't safe and it's illegal." And I told him, I said, "No, officer, the seat is properly installed. There's nothing wrong with it." And he presses me and he says, "Have you gone to a police, I guess sometimes police will put on like a child's safety seat instruction course?" And he asked if I had attended one. And I said, "No, and I don't need to attend one because this booster seat is installed correctly."
I'm surprised you weren't beaten with a truncheon and handcuffed on the spot.
I know, and he really kind of kept pushing it. And then my kids also had scooters, those like Razor scooters, and they were actually using the scooter to like rest the phone against because they're sharing it for an hour. And so he was very concerned about those. And so he kept bringing up the scooters, and then he kept pressing the car seat. And I finally said to him, I said, "Officer, if it's not installed correctly, would you like to show me how to install it correctly?"
Ooh, where are the bruises? Show me the bruises.
No bruises, but he says to me, "I don't have time for that." And that's when I just had to bite my tongue, because he has time to pull me over to give me a $300 ticket for having not the correct number of people in the carpool lane, but he doesn't have time to make sure children are safe. If he didn't give me a citation or anything. And my kids are really unsafe, as he said they were. I don't know why he didn't do something to make sure they were safe before he let me drive off.
Seriously, I'm actually, based upon the videos, and I don't want to cut the story short, but did he mention something about wasting his time? Or?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, what he made very clear was if he had showed me how to properly install the car seat, that would have been a waste of his time. Absolutely.
But yet he was concerned about the safety of your children, but not concerned to the point where he really wanted to help you out.
Exactly. He would have given me a ticket if he could have. He would have given me a ticket for an arbitrary number of people in the car. I'm sure he would have given me a ticket for the windows if they were illegally tinted, so he couldn't tell. But he didn't do any of those things, because that's...
But spent like 20 minutes hassling you, but not 2 minutes helping.
Right.
So we're getting short on time. So let me just wrap up. This is a minor incident of police inefficiency, and quite frankly, based upon the videos I've seen on YouTube, just put in a search term in YouTube that says "cop threatens to take somebody's car unless they buy tickets to nonprofit event." Another cop. If you want to look at people breaking in windows and snatching people out of cars, you can watch this stuff all day. I mean, you don't have to watch reality TV; just watch reality. And it's this. I'm seriously. I think, based upon what I've seen, you were very lucky to come out of this without being shackled and having your kids taken away from you. Because a lot of times they'll threaten people who have kids in the car. We'll take those kids to protective services and take them away from you unless you do this. So it's like the Gestapo out there. And on another show at a later date, we'll probably, this is so scary that I don't know if we should talk about it. So let's wrap up. And once again, this is the Libertarian Counterpoint. And I want to thank you very much for watching this evening. The 3 people who've called in. No, we don't have the ability to call in. I wish we did. That would be fun. I'll give you my cell number. We'll do that next time. Veronica, I want to thank you very much for telling us your story. I would certainly rather have a CHP out saving lives and pulling people over for erratic driving than lecturing you for 20 minutes about things which weren't illegal. Phillip, thank you very much for your understanding and your input, especially on the economic issues. And thanks again for watching Libertarian Counterpoint, and have a wonderful evening, folks.